sold out. Through mid-2026, over 2,000 companies on the waiting list. And the truck doing this to the industry isn't some prototype sitting in a lab. It's rolling off a factory floor in Nevada right now, at 100 to 150 units a week, and the fleets running it are saving $32,000 to $50,000 per truck. Per year. You heard that right? PepsiCo has over 100 of these things on the road, and what they reported back stopped the industry in its tracks. Maintenance costs? Down 66% per mile. Fleet uptime? Higher than their diesel routes. Energy cost per mile? Less than 20 cents. Compare that to 65 cents for diesel. That gap is not a rounding error. That is the trucking industry's entire margin. Gone. So what exactly changed? What upgrades did Tesla just push through that widened that gap even further? And what does this mean if you own a diesel truck or a company that makes them? Find out now. Let's start with what this machine actually does that diesel physically cannot. The 2025 Tesla Semi, the version going into fleets right now, runs 3 permanent magnet motors on the rear axles. Combined peak output, 1,100 kilowatts, over 1,400 horsepower, 0 to 60 at 80,000 pounds gross vehicle weight in about 20 seconds, loaded, fully loaded, and then it brakes. Without touching the brake pads, single-pedal regenerative braking handles the vast majority of stops, which is why brake service on the Semi runs 70 to 80% less often than on a diesel rig. That alone is $1,400 to $2,800 a year back in a fleet operator's pocket. But the number everyone keeps coming back to is the range, 500 miles, EPA rated, at 65,000 pounds. That's not a marketing slide. That's what PepsiCo, Anheuser-Busch, and J.B. Hunt are running right now on real routes. And charging? The Megacharger V2 delivers 1.2 megawatts. That's not a typo. 1,200,000 watts. You go from 10% to 80% in 38 minutes. That's the same time a diesel driver takes their mandatory rest break. The Semi is not asking you to change your operation. It's fitting inside the one you already have. Now here's where it gets genuinely wild. Because the truck that PepsiCo started running in 2022, it's already been replaced twice by upgrades that most people haven't even heard about. In late 2024, Tesla swapped in the 4680 structural battery pack. The old pack was good. The new one is in a different class. Energy density up 16%, pack mass down 10%, and it pushed the long-range Semi from 400 miles of real-world range to 500 in the same vehicle envelope. Then in early 2025, Tesla quietly revised the motor drive units. They switched to silicon carbide power inverters. What that means in plain terms, the drivetrain runs 3 to 5% more efficiently at highway cruise. At 100,000 miles a year, that saves a fleet operator another $680 to $1,020 per truck in electricity costs per year. Without changing anything else. These are not press release upgrades. These are compounding financial advantages that widen every single quarter. And then there's the software. Every Semi built from the second quarter of 2025 forward includes Tesla's Hardware 4.0 autonomous driving computer, 144 trillion operations per second, 8 cameras, 360 degrees of coverage. Tesla has already activated supervised highway driving mode for commercial fleets. The truck handles steering, braking, and throttle on highway corridors, while a licensed driver monitors. Industry analysts at Morgan Stanley estimate that even supervised FSD could reduce driver-related accidents by 30 to 40% on highway operations. Full hands-off autonomy isn't approved yet, but the hardware to run it is already in every truck being delivered today. If you want to know what's actually happening in transportation and tech before it hits the mainstream, not the press releases, the real engineering and the real numbers, subscribe. We break it down every week. Let's put this in the terms that actually matter. A typical Class 8 diesel fleet running 100,000 miles a year spends $52,000 to $65,000 on fuel per truck. Add $15,000 to $18,000 in scheduled maintenance, brake service, unplanned downtime, DEF fluid, oil changes, particulate filter regions. The full annual bill on a diesel rig lands somewhere between $77,000 and $96,000. Before you've paid the driver. Now run the Tesla Semi at the same miles. Energy at a blended rate of about 20 cents a mile. That's $19,000 to $20,000. Maintenance, $4,000 to $6,000. Brake service, under $700. you're looking at a total annual operating cost that's $27,000 to $50,000 lower. Per truck, the purchase price premium is real. A long-range semi runs around $180,000 to $200,000. A comparable diesel tractor goes for roughly $130,000. That's a gap of $50,000 to $70,000. But, and here's the number most people miss, the federal Section 45W Commercial Clean Vehicle Tax Credit gives you $40,000 back in year one. In California, the HVIP program adds another $60,000. For qualifying California fleets, the semi costs less to buy than diesel before you've driven a single mile. Even without those credits, the operating savings pay off the price premium in 2.5 to 4 years on a truck with a 10-year service life. That math is not close anymore. What sounds like the better deal to you? And we haven't even talked about the counter-arguments yet, because there are real ones. Or what happens to this industry when Tesla gets autonomous approval? That's still coming. Now, Tesla isn't running this race alone, and the response from the established players tells you everything you need to know about how serious this is. Freightliner's e-Cascadia Gen 2? 230 miles of range, 350 kilowatts of charging, starts at $250,000. Kenworth's T680E? 150 miles, 150 kilowatts charging, same price range. Volvo's VNR Electric, the best of the legacy bunch, hits 275 miles on a good day. The Tesla Semi does 500 miles, at 1.2 megawatts of charging, at a lower price than most of its competitors. This is not a close race. Nikola, once considered Tesla's most credible rival in heavy-duty electric trucking, bankrupt, production ceased. The stock market has started pricing this in. Daimler Truck has declined roughly 18% from its 52-week high. PACCAR, which makes Kenworth and Peterbilt, trades at a forward price-to-earnings ratio nearly 22% below its 5-year average. Analysts at JP Morgan and UBS are citing the Tesla semi-ramp directly in their notes. Cummins, whose diesel engines power roughly 40% of all North American Class 8 trucks, has already guided for a 12 to 15% decline in on-highway engine revenue by 2027. These aren't analysts speculating. These are the companies inside the industry updating their models. Now let's be honest about where the Semi doesn't work, because it doesn't work everywhere, not yet. The payload penalty is real. The long-range battery pack adds significant weight. Under federal bridge law, a Tesla Semi can carry 2,000 to 4,500 fewer pounds of freight than a comparable diesel rig. For dense commodities, beverages, metals, refrigerated food, that matters. It can erase a meaningful portion of the operating cost advantage on weight-sensitive loads. The charging network is still thin. 35 Megacharger stations cover roughly 40% of US Class 8 freight miles. If your routes run through the Mountain West, rural corridors, or any lane not near an I-5, I-80, or I-95, you may not have a charging option en route. Tesla is targeting 100 stations by end of 2026, but it's not there yet. And for true long-haul, 500 to 800-mile runs, the Semi requires at least one charging stop per shift. That adds 38 to 45 minutes of non-productive time. For truckload carriers running those lanes, diesel and hydrogen alternatives remain more practical right now. The Semi is not a universal replacement for diesel today. For roughly 40 to 45% of US freight applications, the case isn't there yet. But for the other 55 to 60%, the case is already closed. Imagine this. It's 2028. You run a regional distribution fleet out of a hub in California. Your operation covers routes up to 350 miles. Grocery distribution, beverage logistics, consumer goods, standard regional work. 3 years ago, you made the switch, 50 Tesla Semis, replacing your oldest diesel rigs. Your drivers come in every morning to trucks that are fully charged, preconditioned, and ready. No DEF fluid checks, no filter regions, no oil changes scheduled for next week. Your energy bill at the depot is lower than your old diesel fuel costs, even after the grid upgrade you had to do in year one. That upgrade cost $500,000. It paid for itself in savings inside 18 months. Your maintenance team, the guys who used to wrench on transmissions and exhaust after-treatment systems, now handle software updates and tire rotations. Your unscheduled downtime is down. Your driver satisfaction scores are up. The cab is quieter, smoother, and the drivers aren't climbing up into a greasy engine compartment at mile 50,000. And every quarter, Tesla pushes a software update over the air. The truck you bought in 2026 has better autonomous highway capability than the day it was delivered. You haven't touched the hardware? That's not a fantasy. That's what PepsiCo is already reporting, at scale. Right now, the Tesla Semi just sold out its order book through mid-2026. Over 2,000 companies couldn't get one fast enough. And if autonomous highway approval lands in the 2026 to 2028 window, which no longer looks implausible after Aurora completed the first driverless commercial haul between Dallas and Houston in 2024, the disruption to the 3.5 million Class 8 drivers in the US becomes a conversation that goes well beyond fuel costs. We want to hear from you. If you run a fleet or work in trucking, would you switch? What would it take? And if you were an investor in Daimler or PACCAR right now, what would you be doing? Drop it in the comments. And if you want to know what Tesla's doing with the robot it's building to load these trucks autonomously, we broke that down in our Tesla Bot Gen 3 video. Go watch that next. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.